Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for stopping by the channel. So for today's video, we're going to be checking out a very special Seiko limited edition spring drive GMT, a watch that happens to fall within their LX catalog. So LX is derived from the Latin word lux, and these are all titanium timepieces that really reach the upper echelon of what Seiko can achieve before you really get into Grand Seiko territory. So the watch on the wrist is the Seiko SNR049. This watch is only limited to 400 pieces, and it actually has a price tag that rivals many Grand Seikos, coming in with a retail price of over 7,000 Canadian dollars, if you can believe it. Now this watch is also nicknamed the Seiko Skyline, and that really pulls from some of Seiko's heritage in watches that have left the stratosphere, because in 2008, a watch with a similar spring drive movement accompanied a civilian on the International Space Station. And the gradient dial is meant to mimic just what it would look like looking down at the Earth from the ISS, because the dial starts off black near the top and it goes to a gradient blue as you get close to the bottom of the dial. Now I really love this colorway, and I just think it also makes a really great summer watch. And in fact, this watch recently accompanied me on a vacation to Northern Ontario in Tobermory. So stick around to the end of the video if you want to catch a clip of how that trip went. But why don't we flip perspectives now, and you guys can actually check out this Seiko Skyline up close in the studio. Alright, so now that we're in the studio, we can take a closer look at this Seiko SNR049, also known as the Skyline GMT. Now, I think I might have scared some of you off at the start of the video when I mentioned the price tag, because really you're paying Grand Seiko money for this timepiece. And while it is really hard to rationalize spending big money on luxury watches, I can offer you a few different things to consider when this watch was positioned at that price point. First off, this is a limited edition Seiko. There's only 400 pieces worldwide, and I don't think that's enough on its own to justify the price point. But there are some Grand Seiko-esque features inside this watch. First and foremost, you do have a spring drive GMT movement in the caliber 5R66, and this really is an equivalent Grand Seiko GMT spring drive caliber, the 9R66. It's just not finished as well, which you won't even notice because the case back is closed on this timepiece. Another aspect you should really consider is that the case and bracelet are Zuratsu polished, which is Grand Seiko's hand finishing method that gives you a mirror-like finish across the case and bracelet. This is even more impressive when you consider that this case and bracelet are done in titanium, and the equivalent Grand Seiko GMT model I'm thinking of, the SBGE 201, is done in stainless steel, which is a little bit easier to finish, but it also weighs more. Titanium is about 30 to 40% lighter, and when you're dealing with a watch this size, having titanium is probably the way to go, in my humble opinion. So speaking on the case dimensions, on my calipers I measure the overall case diameter at 44.7 millimeters, and then if you flip the watch back over to the side here, the lug to lug, so that's the wingspan between my thumbs here, comes in at 50.3 millimeters, although if you include the male end links on the supplied titanium bracelet, it extends the effective lug to lug to about 52 millimeters, although you can see how nicely the lugs do curve to hug your wrist. Now total case height, I grab it at 15.2 millimeters at its highest point. That's from the apex of the screwed down case back and to the top of the flat sapphire crystal, which carries Seiko's super clear coating, might I add, which is one of the best anti-reflective treatments I've seen at this price point. In many instances, that crystal seems to just disappear. And the last measurement I'd like to discuss is the lug opening for the supplied bracelet is a nice even 22 millimeters. I believe that this 3-link style bracelet tapers down to about 20 before you get to the signed Seiko clasp that just has a twin trigger releasing mechanism and a milled out swing arm here. Now, this class system actually has a nice hidden feature where if you actually prolong pushing down both of the twin triggers here, you can actually give yourself some toolless on-the-fly micro adjustment, about 1 link's worth of ratcheting extension. And this is a feature I wish they would offer on Grand Seikos, but I do also wish that they would extend the length of the clasp and the level of adjustment, because 1 full link I don't think is enough. And they didn't compensate better by giving you half links at all. So I actually still struggle to get the perfect fit on my wrist size, but I do really like the innovation that Seiko's doing here. So here's a quick in-studio wrist shot just to show you how this Seiko Skyline wears on my 7.5-inch wrist. That is 19 centimeters in circumference if you're going with the metric measurements. And because this watch is titanium, it's quite light given the size. It weighs in at 142 grams on my wrist with the bracelet. And if you really want to get crazy, you can easily throw this watch on a bevy of aftermarket strap options. And I do find that's probably the way to go if you're going for something lightweight and suitable for all-day wear. So let's take a closer look at the dial and the GMT design for this particular watch. I really like the applied Seiko logo just below a 12 o'clock position that's done in silver, and it's really legible considering the top portion of a dial is black. What's not as legible is the GMT printing closer to the 6 o'clock position because it's a light blue against the darker blue gradient dial. Now the hour markers are all applied, really nicely finished by being multifaceted, and they are also deep filled with Seiko's green LumaBright technology, as are the handset itself for the broad sword style hour and minute hands. You even have a loomed counterweighted portion to the needle-like seconds hand, which you don't often see on spring drive movements, and that's kind of a cool feature. And I also really like the color of blue they went with for the 24-hour GMT hand, which is easily discernible from the remaining handset. Now, replacing the 3 o'clock marker, you actually have a nicely framed date window, and I really like how legible the date is with white printing on the date disc. Interdispersed between the actual applied indexes, you also have some printing for the 24-hour time for all of the odd numbers. And then for the even numbers for the 24-hour markings, those are all applied onto the sapphire capped bezel, which is also nice because it's loom filled, which you don't often see on a lot of Seiko models. And then the bezel itself has some really nice teeth on it, and it's a bi-directional bezel, and it's just friction fitted on, so you're not going to have like a click spring or that ratchety clicky feel. But the tension on this is just perfect. It's tight enough that you can still be precise, but not loose enough where you're just going to knock it around and adjust your 24-hour time by accident just by wearing the watch. Now the crown for this watch is at the 4 o'clock position. It is unfortunately unsigned, but it is screwed down and nicely sized. Easy to grip and unthread even with my gloved hands here. In the open position, you can manually wind the spring drive movement, and that is reflected by the power reserve indicator between about the 7 and 9 o'clock position there. If you do pop this into the intermediate position, you can actually independently jump your local hours, making this watch a true traveler's GMT, and you can see that that's how you also adjust the date quickly on the fly. If I do pull the crown out to its extremity, you can actually stop the seconds hand, so effectively hacking the movement, and then you can set to really any reference time that you would like to do. So that is my overview for the Seiko Skyline in terms of its design and details, but I would like to provide a balanced review, so there are some negative elements that I'm going to point out as well. I did touch on this earlier, but the clasp itself I think could be improved even more by giving you more micro extension instead of just 1 full link. And while Seiko does utilize a lot of Grand Seiko touches on this watch, it definitely lacks some of the overall attention to detail when you get in at a macro level. For example, I did notice some fine particles on the power reserve needle hand, but you really won't notice this with the naked eye. but obviously these things are not present when you buy a Grand Seiko. But outside of those couple of nitpicks, I really enjoy this Seiko Skyline GMT. I do wish it wasn't so limited because I do know a lot of people would love to get their hands on this particular watch. You can buy similar spring drive GMTs within the LX catalog, it just won't be this exact same colorway. But as always guys, I also want to hear your feedback on this particular watch. Would you consider buying a Seiko that costs over $7,000? And what do you think Seiko can do to improve this watch and make it more available in the future? Now, if you guys do like this content, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. It helps me out a ton. And as always, I can't wait to catch you guys in the next video. Take a quick look at how my trip to Tobermory went as well on your way out. Here we go. That was not worth it.